64. And it would have included or involved Averell's command along with some of his cavalry. There was some infantry as well. So Averell is not unfamiliar with this area. Not unfamiliar with this area. This was the Rutherford Farm. Huge area. Now, of course, we have Lowe's and the shopping center. But this is Rutherford's farm, and if you look at the second to last map in your packet, you're now seeing this long line of cavalry have come together, 5 brigades across, slowly walking towards Winchester. Welltown Road is beyond the interstate. So again, they give you some, and it widens out, so it doesn't run parallel, it kind of widens out. So you can start seeing what's happening. If you see up there where it says Bean, there's a small brigade of Tennesseans and Georgians. It's one of the unusual Western units here. They're out here. They've been sent on a mission out west, not knowing this attack was going to occur. They slip in here, they hear the fighting, they cut in, they try and stop Spoonmaker and Powell. Those are the 2 brigades of Averell coming down. You see a little bit of a gap. Yes, but there's nothing that's going to fill that. We're not too worried. And they're coming in, and you see Fergus, Smith, and Payne. Now these are all cavalry organizations. Fitzhugh Lee has been ordered to this part of the battlefield to take over command. Fitzhugh Lee's, Robert E. Lee's cousin, or nephew, excuse me. He has brought a small division of cavalry to the valley previously. Again, Early didn't really care for cavalry. So he never appointed a cavalry commander. He had them all reporting to him. Now, you know, with the valley cavalry and all, you could kind of understand he was very frustrated with them. But with Fitz Lee, he had a very competent leader. But he did not appoint him until later, well, this battle. And it's in the midst of the battle. He says, get over there, take command, and see what you can do to slow them down. So you see Payne and Smith. When we left the visitor center, I talked about there were some cavalry there. They were shooting across Red Bud Run. They had a battery there. That was Payne and Smith. So they've now been ordered up here to try and help stem the flow of Union cavalrymen coming that way. Lee knows he's outnumbered. He knows he can't stand with a sword. So he understands too what you can do with cavalry. He attacks. He can disrupt. And you can make up some differences in your numbers by being aggressive rather than being passive and accepting the attack. If you know anything about cavalry battle, it is a battle of momentum. If you're walking, the best way to meet an attacking cavalry charge is to charge back after. Meet the momentum with momentum. They did not. So the 2nd Massachusetts, which is part of Devon's brigade, they're in the middle, they get chewed up pretty good. Lee is able to disrupt this attack for a little while. He hits them hard. You start and you see the arrow where it hits and then they retreat. He can't hold what he's done, but he has been able to slow it down, and that was his purpose. So that attack would have been across the road here, not where those trees are, maybe a little bit more to the right. So that's where Devon and Lowell and Smith and Payne would have met, right over there. So the railroad is off to our left. Again, got to give you a little more orientation here. So if you would look at the map and turn it this way, it gets you proper orientation for where things were at. So if that helps, please do so. You see Bean has tried to stop Shoemaker. Bean has a very small division or brigade. He's pushed back. You see the dotted lines. the cavalry are now, the Confederate cavalry are now being pushed down the Valley Pike to a second position here, where you now see across 4 Union brigades. Off to my left was Devon's brigade. Thomas Devon was a very well-respected cavalry officer. He started out under Buford. He was a little older than the average. He's about 40 years old, but had actually been an early pre-war militia commander. And Buford once said he could not teach Devon anything about cavalry operations because Devon already knew that. So very competent leader. He's kind of out on a hook on his own. He's kind of swung out towards the fighting. We can hear fighting now down on Redbud. We're not that far from the visitor center, right? Maybe 2 miles, maybe 1.5 miles, that direction. So this fight is beginning, and also this is much more open. Again, remember, the Union troops can not only hear, but on some of these hills, they can see this line of blue heading behind them and coming up. So again, you've got, what we just say, about 500 yards, 600 yards of cavalry across here. Walk, at a walk. Maybe even more menacing than if they came charging. They're at a walk. They repulse attacks almost like swatting a fly. Again, the 2nd Massachusetts was disrupted, but virtually everybody else are coming. So they have now moved, if you look here, they're down near Redbud Run, the creek at the bottom where it says 2nd position. There's a fence there. Again, Smith, Payne, Fitzhugh, they're all trying to set up, again, to slow this attack, do everything they can to keep this line from coming into line with the rest of the army, with Sheridan's army. Again, not going to do much for them, unfortunately, but does slow them down. The last page, second to last page, my apologies, I had you on the wrong page. The 3rd page there, second last, you start seeing where they're beginning to connect with the Union infantry. They have now come up and made connection with the Army. They are now forming the right wing or the right flank of the Union Army. What happens is, where you see Smith, Forsberg, that area, this is also about the place. Here's Hackwood. You know where you are with Hackwood over by the visitor center. You can now see Hackwood on this map, again, to help orient. This attack is now coming in. You have Duval, Harris, Wells. Well, who are those guys? Those are infantry. That was the division that crossed the Redbud Run, came across roughly where the visitor center is, recrossed the Redbud and took them in flank and forced them to retreat back to what was known as the Smithfield Redoubt. So they've been forcing back. You see the line of the Confederate line, recused. You see all of the artillery, but they're being compressed. Confederate army is being compressed, and now here comes these cavalry outflanking that line. It is in this area. Remember, Devon's kind of out here on his own hook. He can see the infantry attack around Hackwood. George Patton's brigade is in the Hackwood lane, the very lane that if you park in the parking lot, you look around, there's another kind of lane there that goes back. That's the Hackwood lane right over here. When he sees that, he sees an opportunity. He flanks the retreating Confederates. Patton has left that line, and he's pulling back to the Smithfield Redoubt. You can see it says Patton right there, kind of in the mix of everything. Devon's brigade decimates Patton's brigade. After this day, for the most part, that unit, Patton's brigade, is almost non-existent. Because what they do, the Union cavalry have been trained to use the saber. Not so much Confederacy, mainly because there weren't a lot of sabers. They're more comfortable with firearms. But in this particular case, when you're already been fighting for 10 hours, and you're retreating, and you turn around and you see about 800 or 1,000 men on horseback with sabers in their hand, you don't try and turn around and stop. You run like the devil and hope you can outrun what you can. There was even a case where one regiment tried to form square. One of the very few instances, obviously, during the war, where the infantry tried to protect themselves with the square. But Devon, and they just ride right through. By the time they get reorganized, you can see Devon now is coming in here. You've got Lowell, you've got Custer. Basically, Custer's going to ride right through the shopping center. You're on the right-hand side. The other two brigades of Merritt's are on the other side. Powell and Schoonmaker, which is Averill's division, are over here. So now you've got this pretty much unbroken line of about 5,500 to 6,000 horsemen, again, walking in towards and menacing this right flank of the Confederacy, or the left flank of the Confederacy. So at that point, we're going to go down to Fort Collier. We'll finish up with Gore. Be glad to answer any questions either now or there. But if we're going to Fort Collier, just be aware we are not turning into the Fort Collier compound. We're going to go through the light and left into a parking lot. Excuse me, right. Go into a parking lot on the right-hand side. We're going to walk up on a hill and look at Fort Collier. We're not going in Fort Collier. We're going to look at Fort Collier from the south. So just so you be aware, this is not the normal, well, we'll go to Fort Collier. We're going to go someplace else. So anybody? Yes, sir.
Where were the Carter Mansion and the Rutherford Mansion in relationship to where we're standing?
Carter would have been, well, there's Carter,